Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Sajwa, and I'm here with Jordan today. We're here for another episode of Cooking Connected with Cooking Matters Minnesota and the University of Minnesota Extension. So let's do a quick recap of what a normal Cooking Matters class looks like. We do this every video, but a normal Cooking Matters class is a 6-week nutrition-based cooking class. And we meet once a week for 2 hours. And usually there will be a chef and a nutrition educator, and they work together to go through a recipe, they demonstrate it, and then we learn a lot of really cool nutrition that goes along with the recipe. So today we're going to be doing something similar. I'll be your educator today, and Jordan will be the chef.
Hi, everyone.
So before we get started, I do want to quickly give out our survey code. Again, we really appreciate you guys taking our survey and helping us continue this kind of work, helping us improve our videos and the content that we're putting out right now. So let me get that program code for our survey out. Make sure I got that. And so today's program code for this week's episode of Cooking Connected, the Ramen Noodle Skillet, is going to be E0975881. So again, that's our program code for today's episode of Cooking Connected. At the end of this video, check the description box and please go ahead and take our survey for us. So again, we can get that feedback and can continue to do this work. So with that, I am going to pass the mic on to Jordan, and we're going to get started with today's recipe.
Sounds good. Thank you, Sajwa. So today's recipe is a little bit different. We're going to kind of do a recipe that is more of a guideline. We like to talk about that a lot in Cooking Matters, how recipes are guidelines. This recipe was actually inspired by a recipe originally made from Iowa State Extension. It can actually be found on one of U of M's extension's website called Real Life Good Food. They are an awesome website on the U of M extension. If you haven't checked them out, do so. They have a database full of awesome healthy recipes.
Oh, yeah.
And lots of tips and tricks, including stuff for physical activity. So go check them out. Again, that's Real Life Good Food at U of M Extension. So today we're going to be making kind of like a healthy ramen. So when you think about ramen, you don't typically think about healthy food, but today we're going to make it a little bit healthier. And ramen is so reasonable, so really this is really right up our alley. So let's go ahead and jump in. Before we get started, the first thing that we always do is wash our hands. 20 seconds, getting all surfaces of our hands, in between our fingers, under our fingernails, and around our wrists. You can sing the ABCs or happy birthday twice. The next thing, if you'll see in my chef's cam here, I've got everything laid out. We like to talk about this as well, called mise en place. This is just setting everything out and making sure everything's in place for your recipe. When you're making a new recipe, or even when you're just cooking in general, it's a good rule of thumb to use because that way you just have everything ready to go. So let's go ahead and get started. This recipe can kind of be broken down into 3 easy steps. That's adding your vegetables and protein, adding flavor, and then adding the ramen. So super easy. So let's go ahead and dive right in.
I like that. I like how simple this is going to be.
Yes, it's really awesome. I like to do this actually on if I have a lot of vegetables in my fridge that I need to use up. This is a good recipe for that. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is actually just start by chopping up our vegetables. Now we are going to be using a chicken today, and I do always like to mention that keeping our chicken separate from our vegetables is always good practice. For cross-contamination reasons, we don't want chicken juice on our vegetables. Even though we are going to be cooking them together, always good practice to do that. So let's go ahead and get started with our pepper here. Now, the original recipe does not call for a pepper or zucchini, but I just wanted to show you guys that you can actually add a lot of different vegetables that are in your fridge. So let's go ahead and start by chopping up our pepper. Using knife safety skills, we're going to pinch our blade and wrap our fingers around. And then again, that just gives you a little bit more power and it's a little bit safer. So I like to chop mine by cutting off the top. There's a few different ways you can chop a bell pepper. And I like to cut off the bottom. Just make a nice little slit there, and then take the middle out. I take the veins out. They're a little bit bitter. I don't really like to eat them, but there's nothing wrong with eating them if you want to keep them in. I have added these to a broth bag in the past, but don't add too many.
Yeah, I was actually just gonna say, if that's something you would want to add to your broth bag, but yeah, you're right. You could do it, just not too many, probably.
Exactly. There's certain vegetables that just don't really go well in broth bags, but you can add a few, I guess.
One thing I do want to note really quickly is I see that you're cutting your bell pepper and cutting from the inside, as in the inside of the pepper is facing you and the outside, the shiny part is on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like what you're doing there. I do find that sometimes if you flip it over, you can even get a little bit more grip. I know I've heard that before, especially when it comes to like tomatoes, that outside like shiny part can be a little hard if your knives aren't always sharp. So
Yeah.
just remember that a sharp knife is a safe knife. So if your knife was really nice and sharp like Jordan's, cutting either way would be really nice and easy, a nice fluid motion as you can see that she's doing there.
Exactly. Thanks for mentioning that, Sajwa. All right. We have a lot of pepper today.
Yeah.
I picked red because it just kind of adds a little bit more color.
Color, yeah. And I was gonna say, look at the colors that you got going on there. We're introducing the red with the bell pepper. We've got a green coming in from our zucchini, and then the bright orange from our carrots. And it looks like you even have a white onion over there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's that. We always talk about eating a rainbow, you guys, and ways that we can take our recipes and add more vegetables. So Jordan already mentioned, it didn't call for a bell pepper, zucchini, but she's adding that in to get more color, more vegetables into her meal today.
Absolutely. Plus, it's absolutely beautiful to look at. So.
It is. Yes, I always forget that like the way you present your food, the way it looks definitely adds to the way, you know what I mean, the way it feels when you're eating it. It just feels so much better.
Yeah. Presentation is key. You don't want to eat something that looks bad. So, something to think about. Especially when you're like introducing kiddos to new vegetables, some things you can do to actually get them to like it a little bit more is kind of dress it up a little bit. Make them into, fun shapes, stuff like that to kind of get them a little more interested, which is a fun tip. So I'm using all of my bell pepper. These bell peppers are kind of spendy. I think it was $1.50. They were on sale for one bell pepper. But again, if you don't use the top, you're wasting 75 cents of your pepper.
Such a large chunk of pepper there to throw away. So I'm happy that you're using that.
Exactly. So we do have a lot of vegetables to chop today, but like I said, this recipe is really versatile. If you don't have this many vegetables, that's fine. Just add what you have. We are going to be actually working with a frozen broccoli today. So canned and frozen and fresh will all work in this recipe. So that just makes it even more versatile. I'm just throwing all of my diced over here in another bowl just to make sure my cutting board's nice and clean. There's one other thing I was going to mention, but I forgot. So
when it comes back to you.
There you go. Great. All right, almost done with this pepper. There we go. All right, so I'm actually just gonna work with, I'm thinking about how I'm placing this in the bowl. So I'm picking like some softer vegetables that I know aren't gonna take as long to cook. So I know like my pepper, my onion, and my zucchini aren't gonna take as long to cook as my carrot. So then I'll put the carrots on top and I'll cook those first. That's just kind of a nice way to organize it. If you want to put them in separate bowls, that might make it a little easier. I just wanted to make it hard on myself today, so I'm adding them all into one bowl.
But also it saves you on dishes later. I know that's one thing, like whenever I hear people, oh, why don't you cook? They always say, I don't want to do the dishes, the cleanup. So, by using one bowl like that, that is one way that you can still, watch your dishes. We don't want to spend the rest of the week cleaning up from one meal.
That's right. So I did cut it in half. We've talked about this a few times with our onions. I think we mention it almost every video. We cut off both sides, leaving most of that fuzzy part. We just cut off the fuzzy part because this side holds the onion together. Then we cut it in half again. I'm going to do a little bit more of an advanced technique by cutting it down like this to make things a little smaller. So you're going to take the palm of your hand and hold it and just kind of work it through. You can do it once, and you can do it one more time on top. Then you're going to use the lines on the onion and just go ahead and cut down again. And I'm not going to use my whole onion. I have a lot of vegetables today, and I use onions a lot in my recipes, so we're just going to use a half onion. If you don't like onions, you can leave them out, or you can cut them smaller so you don't taste them as much. And you'll see that that created a really nice dice there.
Yeah, that looks really good.
When I am cutting as well, I want to be thinking about how big I'm cutting the pieces, not only for the reason that they will cook about the same time, but also how big we want to eat them. So if you have a huge chunk of onion, that might not be super appetizing. So always be thinking about those things as well. We've got our zucchini here, and again, that's rolling around, so we're going to create a flat surface. I'm going to cut the ends off real quick, and then I'm going to cut it straight down the middle. Now I got my flat surface. I'm just going to leave it in little half moons today, just for the sake of time. I can cut it a little bit quicker this way. Of course, you can always chop it again in half if you don't want these big chunks of zucchini.
Right.
And I mean, you could always use the leftover zucchini like this side in some zucchini noodles if you wanted. I know we've made a video on that, so if you want to learn how to make zucchini noodles,
Well, plug. Yeah. I feel like zucchini is one of those versatile vegetables that I tend to forget about oftentimes. So, don't forget that that is a really great one to incorporate in quite a few recipes. It's more versatile than you think.
Yeah. Zucchini must be going out of season because when I was looking at them in the store, they didn't look super great. So, kind of a bummer. But it was nice while we had it. All right. Now I am going to use some carrots. These are just carrots I had in my garden, so they're kind of little babies. But we're just going to cut those real quick. I'm going to take, I always notice that my garden carrots, they have lots of little like hairy like stems on there, so I take those off, and then I cut the ends off. Now, to make it a little safer, you can cut it down the middle. I'm just going to use my claw and hold it really fine there. Be slow if you are going to cut your carrot like this. Just go slow. One, so they don't roll away on you like that, and two, so you don't cut yourself.
And when it comes to something like a carrot, a question I've had before in a class is, should I be peeling my carrot? Is that necessary? When you do get the full carrot like that and it hasn't been processed into the little baby carrots that normally you would get with lunch, sometimes they do have like little, I don't want to say dark markings, but little markings on them going up the carrot. Just the natural lines. Yeah, that right there that Jordan just showed us. Just the natural lines of the carrot, and that's perfectly fine and safe to eat. Just make sure that you're rinsing your vegetables before you're preparing them in any meal, and you're okay to use the outside of that carrot. I mean, by peeling that, you're getting rid of more of your carrot, and that's a money waster, and you're getting rid of more nutrients that you could be putting into that recipe. So,
absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, carrot is one that takes a little bit longer to cook, so I'm trying to make sure that I'm cutting them about the same size. I'm going to start cooking my carrot first. So I did add some more garlic to the recipe. I've already chopped a little bit up there. And then this one has actually already been de-papered for me. My husband and I were making pickles, so we had this weekend, so we have lots of leftover garlic from pickles. We're just going to go ahead and chop straight down. I'm making these little planks. And then I'm gonna go ahead. This one's kind of a slippery one, so make sure you're using
Uh-oh.
your claw. Always a good idea. All right. And then finally, I'm gonna mince this for my fingers on the top and then just rocking my knife around on there. If you're not comfortable with this technique yet, what you can actually do is you can grab the top of your knife here, making sure you're not, you know, towards the blade, and you can lift up and chop down like that. But this way is a little bit faster. If you're just working on your knife techniques, you know, I'd encourage you to keep trying. It takes practice and it takes time. Those people on Top Chef have been chopping vegetables every day. It seems like they've worked their entire lives to do that. So
Yeah,
you'll
it's
be a
not a
top chef.
competition.
Yeah. You can be a top chef someday if you want to be. All right. I'm just going to quickly rinse my hands off. All that garlic likes to stick to me. All right, so we've got all of our vegetables prepped now. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly prep my chicken, and then we can get started cooking.
Wonderful.
So I made sure to leave my chicken in the fridge as long as possible. My vegetables are off to the side, you will notice, but just making sure that all of your protein you keep in the fridge until you need it. It's always a good idea. You don't want to risk getting any food illnesses from chicken that's been in the danger zone too long. So I'm just cutting these into little bite-sized pieces. Again, about the same size so they all cook. But we're gonna be temping our chicken at the end to make sure everything's cooked properly. And we'll get this bowl out of the way. It says about 2 cups. We might have a little over here, but the recipe calls for about 2 cups of chicken. All right, so we got that all together. Now we can get cooking.
Awesome. Yeah, so I mean, this recipe is a really great example of a packaged food makeover, and that's kind of what we like to call it with Cooking Matters, a packaged food makeover. So it's maybe a convenience food that you've spiced up by, you know, using your own spices, adding more vegetables, you know what I mean, and bringing it up to a point where it can be a little bit healthier. I know on the back of a normal ramen noodle package, you read, and if you follow the directions, it's not having all the extra protein and vegetables that we're going to be adding in today's skillet. So just keep that in mind. But when you are working with packaged foods, like for example, a ramen noodle, consider, you know, adding that fresh, frozen, or canned vegetable to help amp it up and get those colors in there. Consider a protein like chicken, a nice lean protein. Another thing that could work might be shrimp if you're into that, or turkey, steak, a lean cut of steak could work. And then also, you know, when it comes to that ramen noodle seasoning package, consider using half. I mean, those things can be really jam-packed with salt, and if you use half, you can add some of your own herbs and seasonings to really bring that up, bring the flavor up for you. So keep that in mind. And then if you wanted to do something similar, excuse me, and you didn't want to use the ramen noodles, you could use a whole grain angel hair pasta. And by doing that, you're getting your whole grains in there. And then you could add your favorite veggies in there, some broth, all of that stuff, and then cook it. And there you go. You kind of have your own DIY ramen noodle. So keep that in mind as you're preparing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sajwa.
Yeah, of course.
So I just went ahead and added some oil to the bottom of my pan. I added some of my denser vegetables. So I've got my carrots and some zucchini. Again, I am using one bowl, so some of the softer vegetables snuck in there, and that's okay. But like Sajwa mentioned, I'm just trying to cut down on dishes. So we're just gonna go ahead and cook these until they're a little bit softer. Especially when you're making like stir fries, it's always a good idea to think about how denser vegetables, are gonna take longer to cook. So start by putting those in the pan first. So I'm just gonna cook these for a little while. Um, if you're noticing that your vegetables are starting to stick to your pan, I only like to add oil about once. What you can do is you can actually add like a tablespoon of water, and water will help to release those vegetables sticking to your pan. And that just helps you to reduce the amount of oil that you're putting in your with your vegetables. So these have cooked down a little bit. I can feel my carrots. I cut them pretty thin, so they got soft pretty quick. And I do like my stir fries or skillets with a little bit of crunch with my vegetables. So I'm gonna go ahead and add the rest of these veggies. And then we are gonna add a little bit of frozen broccoli, just because I really like broccoli. Now, if I had them on hand, something else that I would consider adding to this would be mushrooms. I really enjoy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things you can do with this. So, be creative with it. Use vegetables your family likes. Use vegetables that you like.
Yeah, and I mean, you can get creative with your protein too. I did mention using shrimp or like a lean cut of steak of beef earlier, but you could also try something like a tofu. I know we've worked with that before in our cooking connected videos. You could use that as a meatless alternative, and it's also very effective. You could also try incorporating beans or something like a garbanzo bean, something like that, to add protein to this. So those are all things to keep in mind. I also just well, let me know. Do I have time to do a little bit of nutrition, Jordan?
Absolutely. I'm just going to quickly add my chicken and let that cook. So while that's cooking, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, and then jump right in whenever you need.
Okay.
But I was just going to continue talking about our packaged food makeover. That's kind of the theme of today. And I wanted to talk about some of those things that, are kind of like the just add meat options. They're box meals, maybe something like a hamburger helper or some sort of thing where all you have to do is add meat and bada boom, bada bing, you have a meal. Well, some things that you can do to kind of amp those up and help those be a little bit healthier is to actually also add vegetables. So, again, broccoli, carrots, spinach, all of those would be great options to add to something like that. And then another thing you might want to consider is draining the oil from your meat. That is a great way to reduce the amount of fat in there. You could put that, and that really helps. And then also we do have some really great, alternatives from, Cooking Matters, like our turkey tacos that we've done before that would work really well. Our stir fry, those are very quick and easy recipes kind of for those last minute jams that you might be in. And then sometimes if you're making like a macaroni and cheese or something of the sort, you could consider adding vegetables to that just in the last few minutes of cooking. That's one way to add more color. Or if you're feeling daring, try making your own mac and cheese from scratch. We do have a great Cooking Matters recipe for that for a stovetop mac and cheese. So keep that in mind. And then my favorite tip of all is when you're in that last minute jam and you just break out that frozen pizza and you're getting ready to make that, stop. And before you put it in the oven, consider adding some vegetables on top of that. So by adding your own toppings like mushrooms, peppers, onions, tomatoes, any of the things that you like, you can put those on top of your pizza, and that'll help it be a little bit healthier. Or you can try the Worx pizza with Cooking Matters. Have we done that one on this Cooking Connected, Jordan?
We have, yes.
Yeah, we have. I thought so. So the Works pizza recipe, we do have that in our Cooking Connected series as well. But try adding some of that, turkey pepperoni instead of the regular pepperoni. Adding those extra onions and tomatoes and mushrooms and all those things really ramp up that recipe and help it make it a little bit healthier. So those are just all different ways that you can kind of remake packaged foods. things that you commonly eat. And again, the skillet recipe is really great. I could definitely see myself using this.
Yes, it's so easy to dress up some really convenient foods and make them a lot healthier. So this is still cooking a little bit. I'll show you what it looks like right now. I added my chicken and my garlic. You'll see that my chicken is still a little pale. We're just gonna make sure that that is really well cooked. This is really important. You don't want raw chicken in your skillet. Um, the benefits of working with tofu again, you're not too concerned about, anything like the chicken with having cross contamination, and you have a little bit more protein in there that's cost effective. So another plug for tofu if you ever want to try that. Um, so our next steps while we're waiting for this to cook a little bit more is we're going to add our seasonings. So if you're in a time crunch, you can add the flavor packet. The flavor packet unfortunately has a lot of sodium in it. There's a lot of additives in there. So I don't really, and that's a good option. If I've seen a lot of other recipes that actually save these, so if you want, you could save them. I'm not going to use this today. I'm going to use my own season blend. This is a copycat kind of the same thing, but it has a lot less salt. So we have onion powder. We have 2 tablespoons of onion powder, 2 tablespoons of ginger, 2 tablespoons of garlic powder, and then 2 tablespoons of pepper. So this is a lot of seasoning. But I'm probably not going to use it all, to be honest with you. I'm going to just kind of season to taste. If I find that I need more, I will add more. And this kind of reminds me of if you make recipes like this often, you can make this ahead of time in bulk and just save it like you would like a taco seasoning.
Yeah.
This is a great way to reduce your sodium and also, have this bulk stuff on hand that kind of cuts costs a little bit. But we're working with a pretty reasonable noodle option today. I think I paid a quarter for this.
Yeah.
So
They're usually something like 15 cents, 25 cents.
yes, they are very reasonable. So, it's really awesome to be able to make over such a reasonable option and make it a lot more healthy. So we are going to add a little bit of liquid to this. The original recipe says to add a cup of water next. So you'll see my chicken now. It's starting to get a little warm here, but my chicken now isn't quite as raw looking. So that is good. We are getting there. Next, we're going to go ahead and add our seasonings. We do have quite a bit of extra stuff in here, so I'm going to add maybe a little bit more seasonings. So I'm just going to go ahead and add this in. And again, you can always add more, but you can't take away.
Mm-hmm.
So,
there, Jordan.
if you think that, just add, and then once you're done, you can taste it, and you can always add more seasonings. So just remember that.
Yeah, and what I like about Jordan's seasoning mix, the one that she made herself, is, like she mentioned, it's got far less sodium than the one that comes in the noodle package already. Excuse me. So you know what I mean? By adding those extra herbs and spices, she's making sure to incorporate that as her main seasoning form and getting flavor from that instead of just the sodium. So at the end, after she's done cooking, if she feels like she needs just a little bit of salt, she can always sprinkle that on top. And she doesn't have to worry about over salting her food as she's pouring her seasonings in there because again, there's no sodium in there. So that's really awesome. I like how you did that there, Jordan.
All right, so we're going to add our liquid now. So instead of the cup of water, I'm adding a cup of chicken broth, and this just adds a lot more flavor. So I'm going to quickly add this.
And when you're choosing your chicken broth, do check out those low sodium or low fat options too. I oftentimes take that route. Again, it helps out with keeping that meal a little bit lower on the sodium side, on the fat side, and making it healthier. Not saying that salt's the bad guy. It's not a bad guy. It really does help tie all those flavors together, but we just don't want to overdo it,
Exactly. And of course, you can always make your own broth at home. We always mention our broth bags. Unfortunately, I just ran out of my homemade broth, so this is a low sodium option. So now we're going to, I just quickly took those ramen. I am going to add the little crunchies at the end because those are the best.
Yeah.
Um, and I just kind of cut them up and put them in here.
Right.
The moisture from your broth or your water, whatever you have on hand, will make those ramen noodles, kind of cook a little bit and become soft. So we are wrapping up here pretty quickly.
So while Jordan's just putting the finishing touches on her skillet, I do want to talk about a few ways we can eat smart when we are eating out. We already talked about making over convenience foods that you might be making at home, but it's kind of hard to make healthy choices when you're out to eat. Sometimes you might feel like you're restricted to just salads and fruit cups, and that's not the case. You can always look for whole grain options on the menu, look for ways that you can add extra vegetables into it. So maybe you have salad instead of fries, you know what I mean, with your burger. That's a great option. I've already talked about having pizza with lots of extra colorful vegetables on there. I have talked about incorporating whole grain pastas, whole grain bread. Maybe if you're at a sandwich shop or something of that type, you can always incorporate those things there. Again, adding more vegetables if you're, getting a sandwich of some sort or on your burger. And then, making those smart protein and dairy choices. So choosing lean meats, like a leaner beef, choosing turkey. Turkey burgers are awesome. Chicken sandwiches, things like that. Having low fat yogurts, with fruit, maybe choosing to have a low fat cheese or even leaving the cheese off. Now, I know that's a tough one, but consider it. I always like to mention choosing non-creamy salad dressings. Those tend to have, less fat, and also being very sparing with your salad dressing. So making sure that you're not just pouring it all on there. Taking your time with that, being very particular about how much you add to your salad. And then also watching your sauces. I find that, a lot of extra salt and calories can come from our sauces. The barbecue sauces, honey mustards, ketchups, mayos, tartar sauces, all of those things on the side, they do add more calories and more sodium to the meal that you're having. So keep that in mind and just make sure you're not overdoing it with the sauce. They're there to accompany your meal, not to be your meal. So I always have to tell my husband that because he's a big honey mustard fan. So keep that in mind when you are choosing your sauces. And then finally, when it comes to going out to eat, let's say those other things just aren't working. You're going to treat yourself today, and that is not a problem. Consider having water instead of a soda or a juice, or maybe watering down your juice a little bit so it's not so sugary. You could try ordering a low fat milk with your meal. That also really helps. You can try to keep that in mind. And then finally, portion sizes. So at the restaurants, they often give you those great big old plates and they fill them all the way up. And you're like, oh, this is so exciting. But you have to slow down there and watch your portion sizes, because they can easily get you off track when you're eating off of those big plates. Next thing you know, you've eaten like 2 or 3 times the portion size. And so keep that in mind. You can always split larger meals with family or friends. Choosing small fries or small drinks is a great option. And then finally, if you're getting a burger, consider just getting a single instead of a double or a triple burger. So those are all things to keep in mind when you're eating outside of the house. And then, of course, make sure you remember our tips from earlier for when you're doing convenience foods inside of your home.
Thank you, Saja. Those are all really great tips for eating out. I love what you tell your husband. That is so funny. That is a great, awesome way to look at it. So I'm just quickly temping my chicken. You'll notice that obviously my chicken pieces aren't big enough to temp on their own. So what I did is I taken multiple chunks and I just stacked them on top of each other to temp my chicken. I am currently at 170. We want to be at 165, so that's perfect.
Uh-oh. Jordan, you froze on me a little bit.
So we are ready to go.
Jordan?
And this is what it's going to look like. Oh,
Jordan,
yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
there you are. Sorry, you froze on me there a little bit. Right after you
Oh,
were talking about temping our chicken, we were at 170, which is the clear, it's the good temperature for your chicken. You're supposed to be at 165. And
yep.
then you cut out there on us.
Okay. So we're all done here. We're just gonna go ahead. I just wanted to quickly show you guys what this is gonna look like when all said and done. Lots of colors there. Um, and then I kind of broke up the ramen noodles a little bit in the moisture so they got a little softer. So let me just go ahead and quickly dish up. It's easier to show you guys when it's in a little dish like this. But there are tons of beautiful vegetables in here. We've got protein, veggies, some greens.
That looks wonderful. I can already see the colors, like the oranges, the red. I can see the green from the broccoli. Oh,
Absolutely.
wow.
So that is what it's going to look like all said and done. It's a
So
beautiful,
steamy.
quick recipe. I love it. Um, so that is our skillet. And again, it's super versatile. So, make it how you like it. If you don't think these seasonings would work for you, change it. If these vegetables don't work for you, change it. If this protein doesn't work for you, change it. This is a really, can really be customized to what you want. So that is our skillet. Again, that was inspired by a recipe from Real Life Good Food. So go check out their website when you get a chance.
Yeah, we are gonna link the recipe for from Real Life Good Food down below in the description box, of course. And if you want, please go ahead and take a look around the website and see some of the other great things they have on there. Again, Jordan mentioned earlier, cooking tips, nutrition information, more recipes, all of that great stuff is there. So we're gonna go ahead and put that down below in the description box. And while you're in the description box, feel free to go ahead and click on our survey. I have the program code for you here again. So the program code for this week's episode of Cooking Connected, the ramen noodle skillet is going to be E097581. So again, that's for this week's episode of Cooking Connected. That was the ramen noodle skillet. It looks really good, Jordan. I am so jealous I can't come over and have a bite, but that's okay because I have the recipes, so I'll be running off to the store to get my ingredients later on. So I just want to thank you for
Perfect.
doing that demonstration for us. And thank you to
Absolutely.
all of you guys who came in and tuned in for this week's episode. And please, please take a look at our Facebook and take our poll for next week so we can kind of decide what we're going to be doing next week. We really love the feedback that we get from you guys, and we love doing this kind of work. So we look forward to seeing you guys next week. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.